Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin on my second video, Friday, June 10th, 2016, around 8:45 a.m. heading to the office. And one of the more interesting things worth noting is that HitTail, my creation from that was released in June 2006, has just gotten its second major facelift in that time by its second new owner since Connors Communications. A pretty responsive design that keeps the surprisingly the color themes and logos from a long time ago still intact. And so I guess HitTail is mobile friendly. I guess it's about time. But it does go to show the essential durability of an invention that's now over a decade old and is still in great part in its original form, conceptually, function-wise, and the updates have really only been to accommodate design trends, change the language of implementation from VB script under active server page to Ruby on Rails, and I believe it has gone or is going now to C#. So it's funny how these things are circular. Let's see. Oh yeah, it when the refer variable, the not provided event happened, and Google stopped sending you so much keyword data on the search click-throughs. They switched to also connecting to the API of Webmaster Tools, now Google Search Console, so that you don't even have to install the tracking code in your templates or whatever. So that is probably the biggest architectural change that they've done. There's a few features in there, like the ability to just order articles on the keyword suggestions that you like. But you know, talk about product durability with all the changes over the years, with Google fighting against, say, spammers with the Panda and Penguin and other algorithmic and process updates and defenses. HitTail continues to show you the things that are just nearly working for you, on the edge of performing, which, if pushed a little bit with some modest optimization of one of the, you know, well-known modern factors that make a difference, you can pick up more traffic pretty reliably. And that is a lather, rinse, repeat process, which is an awesome thing because you know, the process never ends. So many sites reach this point where they seem to be kind of topped out in terms of the traffic they can generate. And when you reach that level, the top of the S-curve, such as it were, you're getting all the traffic that what you have published has the potential of generating, you do have to recalibrate this at a higher level with new content or modifications to existing content that tweaks it just over the edge, you know, with some inside knowledge of what edge you're tweaking it over, what additional traffic you're trying to pick up on what particular word combination. And that has worked for the past 10 years reliably, and even continues to work in the post Panda world. So I guess that's one of the more interesting things. Oh, it is much too loud this route. I am going to take a different road. That's one of the main things I wanted to talk about. But the next thing that I think is, you know, up for discussion on this video is what comes after chapter 2 in my book. Because chapter 1 is really an argument for what it is to be technical. So you want to be more technical. You want to be a tech. What does that mean? There's this thing called Unix and another thing called Linux, and they both share a certain heritage but not lineage. But that doesn't matter because they're command compatible programs compiled or written on one platform will live on the other platform very easily. So together they're called NICs, and this book is mostly about the use of Unix and Linux platforms combined with a programming and runtime layer, for which I am choosing primarily Python and the argument for Python. And that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is Alice and Bob Login, a practical hands-on project having to do with authentication, which comes up more and more and is one of the biggest challenges and hurdles to get started. If in the past the hurdles to get started was all the technical issues surrounding having a place to sit down and code and run your code, then the challenges of today is narrowing it down, the choices of what that thing you sit down at and start to code on is, and dealing with the inevitable and usually sooner rather than later tricky authentication schemes that exist today in order to consume and interact with other companies' APIs and services, which you're going to do really quickly after beginning, because more and more no code is an island, and sooner rather than later you're going to be writing something that makes HTTP calls, and if not TCP/IP calls, to some service with some request to get the response. Your system's probably going to be on the internet anyway already. You certainly will be if you're starting with my Levinux platform, because the server build itself requires that connection to the internet in order to build into that development and code execution platform. So you're on the net, you're going to interact with services. Very likely you're going to want to interact with one of Google's services at some point, the YouTube API, Google Docs, whatever. And you're going to have to deal with OAuth 2 authentication, which I had hand-coded support for in the Pipulate project, but which has much better approaches using a client library, probably Google's own, and programming very defensively so that you have a connection and an authenticated connection. There's authenticated, and then there's I believe it's authentication and authorized. So you get authorization to use a particular service, and you hold on to that authorization and you use it for the long haul. In the case of the projects I'm writing, the long haul could be a batch job that could run over a duration of several days using the kind of authentication that traditionally expires and sometimes is forced to expire, I'm finding, in under an hour. So I need to make my first project for the next version of Pipulate extremely long, non-expiring OAuth 2 authentication sessions, or the creation of new sessions when they expire, just to extend that time period. So that's going to be chapter 2. And then what is chapter 3? Well, I'm going to jump right into chapter 2 and the videos accompanying it and the doing of this code using the Vim text editor. And people are going to be like, what? What is that strange environment he's working in? It's not like anything I've ever seen, at least the people who are not regularly exposed to, say, YouTube coding videos. And then I guess chapter 3 becomes the Vim text editor, because it is certainly the most controversial of the pieces I'm proposing. There's enough groundswell behind Python that people are going to go, oh, okay, Python, it's a good choice as a generic, durable, timeless programming tech tool. Good choice. but then they're going to say, oh, this person's trying to get me to code using Vim, or he uses Vim, which really puts him out in the fringe and is asking me to go out into the fringe. And I want to address that right away and say I'm not as religiously tied to Vim as I am to Python. It is a more flexible decision, but only because such environments as Emacs have evil mode, in which you can get all the same advantages as using Vim. Because I really do advocate a certain oneness that you can get into your text editor with and your code, because being transformed, being, you know, mentally moved into this state that is often called the zone by athletes, or the flow by people who research such things. And it is a totally absorbed, concentrated state that changes your perception of time and allows you to have complete and total focus on a single task in front of you to be more productive in a shorter period of time. I saw a YouTube piece that was talking about how extreme sport athletes are one of the best modern examples of people who reliably get themselves into the zone, because if they don't, they're dead during one of their high jumps or, you know, other crazy things that they do, where they have to be, you know, Olympic athlete level in tune with the moment, with nothing else existing that doesn't need to be paid attention to, in order to flawlessly execute the task correctly every time, or else you die. And so extreme sports is a place to look to understand this state, but it's the exact same state that coders get in when solving particularly difficult problems, or solving easy problems in the most efficient or creative ways. There's a lot of ways to look at this and spin this, but it's basically approaching coding as a creative, expressive, and inspired act, something more than just, you know, punching the clock and collecting a paycheck for a undifferentiated technical service. So a lot of people program in Python because they want to, not because they have to. That's changing a bit as more and more schools take up Python as their introductory to programming or computer science language. But you know, it was born on people choosing it, falling in love with it. And so it is with the Vim text editor. This is a text editor that goes back to the rise of Unix virtually. It's a full screen version of something that used to be a one-line text editor, and Vim in particular is the improved version of something that gets shipped with all Unix and Linux machines by default, and which is just always there. There's an alternative to it called Nano, which is, I guess, the free and open source implementation of something called Pico, which is one of which is also always there. So there's plenty of reasons to get out of using Vim. You know, your get out of jail free card is always there if you want to avoid taking up Vim. But my message, and probably my chapter 3 in the book, is going to be the many lifetime rewards, the compounding benefit, the timelessness and durability of your text manipulating kung fu skills, that you will always be able to apply at any machine you sit down at, Vim installed or not, because you'll also be able to go to VI or NVI or GeoVim or NeoVim, I guess it is, or any of the other many choices that exist that you'll be able to transition fairly seamlessly to, because all the keyboard commands are the same. Anyone who's learned a macro language in order to interact with computers will be familiar with the great sense of loss and muscle memory you encounter when you switch platforms. When you go from, when some text editor stops being supported, stops being improved, doesn't survive the major upgrade from one computer OS version to another, like from pre-Mavericks to Mavericks. There's always some little thing that's changing that makes the modern trendy stuff, some might say fads, go away. Just disappear from the landscape. Stuff that you never thought was gonna be able to go away, no longer part of your tool set, or you do yourself more damage than good trying to keep it as part of your tool set. That won't happen to you with Vim, and to a greater extent, the VI-based platforms in general. You learn the VI command set, no matter what hardware you sit down from now into the future to the day you're no longer coding. You will always be able to find one of the VI-based editors on any machine you sit down at and begin editing text files very comfortably. And I believe with a greater level of skill developed over time than you really could with Nano or Pico. There are other text editors that are very graphical based that are always popular, and there's always some darling. When I started out, it was a free one called PFE, and then I moved on to Edit Plus, and then on to Notepad++, and then when I switched to the Mac, it was TextMate, and now Sublime is the latest one. And in the free and open source world, there's the Atom text editor, and everyone has some advantage over the previous and has its own fan base developing, but really only one has its roots going back some, I don't know, it must be at least 30 years to when Bill Joy first programmed VI, and has had a fan base ever since. Oh, Emacs. Emacs is the other one. So for very different reasons, there are two great granddaddy text editors that give you wizard-like superpowers. One plays more like a video game, keying off your muscle memory and sort of getting into a Zen 1 state. Definitely an example of getting into the zone or the flow, because you don't have to take your hands away from the keyboard to operate the mouse, and everything becomes these rhythmic muscle memory patterns. Select whole paragraph, indent it, it just becomes you think in VI commands. And Emacs is a series of macros to get into certain modes that allows you to completely and utterly control the operation and customize the operation of the text editing environment to a degree that is just, as if it were a programming language itself. And its macro language, for example, is a dialect of Lisp, which itself allows self-modifying code. So you can imagine the sort of tricks you can do with programming Emacs with Lisp, environments that are so completely customized and tailored to your workflow that you're super efficient, you're hyper efficient, but you will never have that environment when you sit down at another machine without moving your config files, considerable config files over. With Vim, you could rebuild your .vimrc sitting down in a session, rethinking through what each of those customizations are. With Emacs and those types of Lisp customizations that utterly change your environment, not so much. So I chose VI for its muscle memory video game advantage, but I completely understand that the evil mode of Emacs is likely going to be in my future, because that customization of the environment almost as a programming language very much appeals to me. Vim has its own programming language. Its macros are written in, but they're different. If you go read on the internet about VI versus Emacs, you'll see all the arguments on both sides. So anyway, that'll be chapter 3, talking about all the issues of integrated development environments versus text editors, and of those text editors, you know, what your choices are, why I chose Vim, why my education in book will always use Vim in the examples, and try and make it easy for you to take a stab at it yourself, to get over that initial difficulty that turns most people off on Vim the first time they load it. So that'll be chapter 3 of my Levinux, So You Want to Be a Tech book. And that's a 20-minute video. I took a little bit of an extra walk to get everything I wanted to say in, but I guess I bent your ear for a long enough time. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.